The first time I saw Linda Chapman standing on my doorstep in the middle of a February blizzard. I knew my quiet life in Lakewood, Colorado was about to get a whole lot more complicated. I had just finished clearing my driveway with my brand new Ariens Deluxe 28-inch snow blower when she appeared through the wall of white. Her designer coat already covered in snow, despite the short walk from her McMansion 3 doors down. Her perfectly highlighted blonde hair was tucked under a fur-lined hood, and her expression was the kind of determined smugness I had come to associate with our neighborhood's HOA president. "Marcus Atwood," she called out over the wind. "We need to talk about community resources." I killed the engine on my snow blower and pulled down my balaclava. "Linda, what brings you out in this weather?" She gestured dramatically at my freshly cleared driveway, then at the chaos of snow still burying most of the other driveways on Pinecrest Drive. "That machine. The HOA board has decided it would be best utilized for the benefit of all residents during this unprecedented snowfall." I blinked at her through the falling snow. "You want to borrow my snow blower?" "Not borrow," she corrected, her voice taking on that particular tone that suggested she had already made up her mind and was simply informing me of the decision. "We need you to donate it for community use. Or at the very least, allow the HOA to create a rotating schedule for all residents to access it." I looked at the machine I had purchased just 3 weeks earlier with my Christmas bonus from work. $1,500 of my hard-earned money, bought specifically because I was tired of throwing out my back with a shovel every winter. "That's not happening, Linda." Her expression hardened. "The HOA bylaws clearly state that residents must contribute to the collective welfare of the community. The bylaws say we need to maintain our properties and pay our dues," I countered. "I've done both. My personal equipment is just that. Personal." Linda pulled out her phone, shielding it from the snow with her gloved hand. "Section 12, subsection 4, paragraph 3 states that residents may be called upon to share resources during community emergencies. The county has declared a state of emergency due to this blizzard." "That's for actual emergencies," I said, my patience wearing thin. "Like if someone needed a generator for medical equipment or something, not because people are too lazy to shovel their own driveways." Her eyes narrowed dangerously. "I'll be bringing this before the board." "We meet tomorrow evening, assuming the roads are passable. I suggest you attend." She turned and marched back through the snow, her expensive boots sinking into the fresh powder with each step. I watched her go, already knowing this was going to escalate into something ridiculous. Linda Chapman had been HOA president for 2 years, and in that time, she had transformed our previously quiet neighborhood into a micromanaged nightmare of petty rules and power trips. I went back to clearing my driveway, then helped my elderly neighbor Mrs. Patterson with hers. She was 78 and lived alone, and there was no way she could handle this much snow on her own. That was the difference between actual neighborliness and Linda's version of forced compliance. The next evening, I trudged through still snowy streets to the community center at the entrance of our subdivision. The main roads had been plowed, but the side streets were still a mess. I noticed several driveways remained buried, though whether that was due to absent owners or simple lack of equipment, I could not tell. The community center was overheated and smelled like stale coffee. About 20 residents had shown up, which was more than usual. Apparently, word had spread about the snow blower controversy. Linda sat at the head table with her board members. Patricia Morrison, a real estate agent who seemed to exist solely to agree with Linda. Robert Chen, a middle-aged accountant who rarely spoke. And Deborah Walsh, A retired teacher who had occasionally shown flashes of common sense but usually went along with whatever Linda wanted. "Let's begin," Linda announced, banging a gavel unnecessarily hard against the table. "First order of business. The recent snowstorm has highlighted some inequalities in our community. Some residents have access to expensive snow removal equipment while others are left to struggle." I raised my hand. "Linda, can we skip the speech? You want my snow blower? The answer is no. Can we move on?" Several residents chuckled, but Linda's expression could have frozen the coffee in my cup. "This is not about your snow blower specifically, Marcus. This is about the principle of community support." "Then, in the spirit of community support," I said, standing up, "I'd like to point out that I spent my entire Saturday helping Mrs. Patterson and the Johnsons clear their driveways. For free. How many driveways did you clear, Linda?" Patricia jumped to Linda's defense. "The HOA president has administrative duties that prevent her from physical labor during emergencies." "Right," I said flatly. "Administrative duties like trying to confiscate my personal property." Robert Chen cleared his throat. "Actually, looking at the bylaws, I don't think we have the authority to require residents to share personal equipment. The Emergency Resource Clause refers specifically to situations where lives are at risk." Linda shot him a look that could have melted the snow outside. "We can put it to a vote to amend the bylaws. That would require a majority vote of all homeowners, not just the board," Deborah added quietly. "And 30 days' notice." I could see Linda's frustration building. She was not used to being told no, especially not in front of an audience. "Fine," she said tightly. "Then I'm proposing a special assessment to purchase community snow removal equipment. All in favor?" The board members shifted uncomfortably. Special assessments were never popular, especially when people had just paid their quarterly HOA dues. "How much?" Someone called from the back. "Given the cost of a quality snow blower," Linda said, pulling up something on her tablet, "approximately $150 per household." The room erupted. People were shouting over each other, complaining about the additional cost, questioning why they should pay when some residents already had equipment. One man pointed out that we only got heavy snow a few times per year, hardly justifying that kind of expense. Linda tried to restore order, banging her gavel repeatedly. "This is for the good of everyone. Then you can pay for it out of the existing HOA funds," I suggested. "What happened to that surplus from last year? The treasurer's report showed we had almost 40,000 in reserves." Robert looked uncomfortable. "Those funds are allocated for other projects." "What projects?" I pressed. "We voted down the new entrance monument. The playground upgrade was tabled." "Where is that money going?" Linda stood abruptly. "This meeting is getting off track." "We'll table the discussion of community equipment and revisit it next month." Meeting adjourned. People filed out, grumbling. I caught up with Robert in the parking lot. "Hey, I'm not trying to cause trouble, but seriously, what's happening with the HOA finances?" He glanced around nervously. "Marcus, I'd recommend you request a formal financial review. As a homeowner, you have that right. Submit it in writing." That was interesting. Robert was essentially telling me something was wrong without actually saying it. I thanked him and headed home, my mind working through the implications. Over the next few days, the temperature dropped even further. We got another 6 inches of snow on Wednesday, then another 4 on Friday. My snow blower was getting a serious workout. I continued to help the elderly residents on my street, and a few of my neighbors started offering to pay me or trade services. I declined the money, but accepted when Tom Rodriguez offered to fix my leaking kitchen faucet in exchange for clearing his driveway. Linda, meanwhile, had taken to posting passive-aggressive messages in the neighborhood Facebook group about those who have the means to help but choose selfishness instead. She never mentioned me by name, but everyone knew who she was talking about. Then, on Sunday morning, I got a certified letter. It was from the HOA, signed by Linda, informing me that I was being fined $500 for failure to maintain community standards. The violation cited was that my snow blower had left unsightly tracks in the snow along the edge of my driveway, creating a visual disruption to the neighborhood's aesthetic appeal. I actually laughed out loud. This was petty even by Linda's standards. I called my friend Derek, who was a lawyer specializing in property law. We had gone to college together, and he had helped me review the HOA documents when I first bought the house. "Let me get this straight," Derek said after I explained the situation. "She's fining you for snow blower tracks during a blizzard. Apparently my method of snow removal is aesthetically displeasing. That's absurd. Did you sign anything when you bought the house agreeing to specific snow removal methods?" "No. The bylaws just say driveways and walkways need to be cleared within 48 hours of snowfall ending, which you've done. Ahead of schedule, actually." Derek was quiet for a moment. "Marcus, this sounds like harassment, especially combined with her trying to force you to share your property. You might want to consider pushing back hard on this." "I'm not paying the fine." "Good. Send a written response disputing it, and take Robert's advice about the financial review. If Linda's abusing her position like this, there might be other issues." I spent that afternoon drafting a carefully worded letter disputing the fine and requesting a complete financial audit of the HOA's accounts for the past 2 years. I cited the specific bylaws that gave me this right and had it notarized before sending it via certified mail. Linda's response came faster than I expected. Tuesday morning, she was on my doorstep again, this time with Patricia in tow as a witness. "You want to see the HOA finances?" Linda demanded, her face flushed with anger. "You think you can just waltz in and question 2 years of careful management? It's my right as a homeowner," I said calmly. "And given your attempt to fine me for imaginary violations, I think oversight is needed." "There's nothing imaginary about your violation. Your snow removal creates ruts and uneven surfaces. Linda, everyone's driveway looks like that after it's cleared. That's how snow removal works." Patricia stepped forward, holding up her phone. "We have photographs documenting the violation." I looked at the photos. They showed my driveway, cleared of snow with the standard lines and minor ridges that any snow blower would leave. "This is ridiculous. You're harassing me because I would not let you take my property." "This has nothing to do with that," Linda snapped, but her expression gave her away. "Then you will not mind explaining it to a judge," I said. "Because if you proceed with this fine, I'll be filing a complaint for harassment and abuse of HOA authority." Linda's eyes widened. "You would not dare." "Try me." They left, and I immediately called Derek to give him a heads up that this might actually end up in court. He sounded almost excited about it, which I supposed was a good sign. The next few days were tense. Linda sent me 2 more violation notices, one for having my trash cans visible from the street 15 minutes before the pickup window opened, and another for having a non-approved doormat. Both were equally ridiculous and easily disputed. But then things took a more serious turn. On Friday, I got a notice that the HOA had placed a lien on my property for unpaid fines and assessments. This was a major escalation. A lien could affect my credit and my ability to sell or refinance my home. I immediately called Derek. "She did what?" "Placed a lien. For $1,500 in fines I never legitimately owed." "That's it. We're filing suit. This is beyond petty harassment now. She's damaging your property rights and your credit. Can you be in my office Monday morning?" I took a day off work and met with Derek. We spent 3 hours going through everything, documenting every interaction, every violation notice, every Facebook post. Derek was building a case not just to remove the lien, but to have Linda removed from the HOA board and possibly face personal liability for abuse of authority. "The thing is," Derek explained, "HOA presidents have limited immunity for their official duties, but when they step outside those bounds and act maliciously or in their personal interest, they can be held personally liable. And this situation reeks of personal vendetta." We filed the lawsuit that Wednesday. Linda was served with papers on Thursday. By Friday morning, the neighborhood Facebook group was on fire with speculation and arguments. Some people supported me. Others thought I was being difficult and should have just shared the snow blower to keep the peace. But the really interesting development came that weekend. Robert Chen showed up at my door on Saturday afternoon, looking nervous and carrying a thick folder. "I probably should not be doing this," he said quietly. "But after you requested that financial audit, I started looking more closely at our accounts. Marcus, I think Linda's been embezzling from the HOA." I invited him in and we sat at my kitchen table. Robert spread out printouts of bank statements and invoices. "See these payments to Mountain View Landscaping. $35,000 over the past 18 months for various projects. Except I called Mountain View. They've never heard of our HOA. The company doesn't exist. She created a fake company. It looks that way. And there are others. Alpine Snow Removal Services, Peak Property Management Consulting. None of them are real companies, but they all have received payments from our HOA accounts." He pointed to the total at the bottom of one sheet. "I estimate she's taken about $65,000. That's embezzlement. That's a serious crime." Robert nodded miserably. "I know. I should have caught it earlier, but Linda always handled the invoicing herself and I just reconciled the bank statements. I trusted her." "We need to go to the police," I said. "I know. But I wanted to tell you first, since you're the one who pushed for the audit, and because she's been targeting you so aggressively." We called Derek, who told us to go to the Lakewood Police Department immediately and file a report. He would meet us there. The detective who took our statement was a tired-looking woman in her 40s named Detective Sarah Martinez. She listened carefully as Robert explained what he had found, examining the documents he had brought. "This is definitely something we need to investigate," she said. "But I want to be clear, this is going to take time. We will need to subpoena bank records, verify that these companies do not exist, trace where the money went. It could be weeks or months before we have enough to press charges." "But in the meantime, she's still HOA president," I pointed out. "She still has access to the accounts." Detective Martinez looked at Robert. "Can you freeze the accounts or remove her access? I'd need board approval, and she controls 2 of the other 3 votes." "What about an emergency meeting of all homeowners?" Derek suggested. "The bylaws must have a provision for removing board members." Robert pulled out a copy of the HOA bylaws from his folder. We spent 20 minutes going through them until we found it. A board member could be removed by a 2/3 vote of all homeowners, but only at a special meeting called for that specific purpose. 20% of homeowners had to sign a petition requesting the meeting. "How many homes are in the subdivision?" Detective Martinez asked. 142, Robert said. "So you need about 28 signatures," Derek calculated. "That's doable." We spent the rest of the weekend gathering signatures. I started with the people I had helped during the snowstorms, then expanded to others who had been on the receiving end of Linda's increasingly petty enforcement actions. By Sunday night, We had 35 signatures. The meeting was scheduled for the following Saturday. According to the bylaws, we had to give at least 5 days' notice to all homeowners. Robert sent out the email notification on Monday morning, clearly stating that the meeting was to vote on removing Linda Chapman from the HOA board due to financial irregularities. Linda's response was immediate and explosive. She sent her own email within hours, calling the meeting a witch hunt and claiming I was orchestrating everything because she would not let me hoard community resources. She insisted she had done nothing wrong and had documentation to prove all expenses were legitimate. The neighborhood social media erupted. People took sides, arguments broke out, old grudges surfaced. Patricia remained firmly in Linda's corner, accusing Robert of betraying the board. Deborah, however, sent me a private message saying she had also noticed some inconsistencies, but had been afraid to speak up. The week crawled by. I got 2 more threatening letters from Linda's personal attorney, which Derek promptly responded to with our own documentation of harassment. Detective Martinez called to say they had confirmed that Mountain View Landscaping was indeed a shell company with a bank account that had received the HOA's payments, and then immediately transferred the money to a personal account belonging to Linda Chapman. On Wednesday night, someone slashed my tires, all 4 of them. I discovered it Thursday morning when I was heading to work. My truck sat lopsided in the driveway, rubber shredded. I called the police and filed a report. The responding officer took photos and a statement, but I knew it would be hard to prove who did it. Still, I had my suspicions. My security camera had stopped working the day before, which I had assumed was a malfunction. Now I wondered if someone had deliberately disabled it. Derek advised me to install a new camera system immediately, which I did that evening. 4 cameras covering all angles of my property with cloud backup. If someone tried something again, I would have evidence. Thursday night brought another snowstorm, this one dumping 8 inches of heavy, wet snow. Friday morning, I was out early with my snow blower, clearing not just my driveway but Mrs. Patterson's and the Johnsons as well. Several neighbors came out to thank me and express their support for the Saturday meeting. Then I noticed something interesting. Linda's driveway was completely buried. Her luxury SUV sat trapped under a mound of snow. Given how aggressive she had been about the snow blower, I had expected her to hire someone or at least attempt to clear it herself. But as Friday wore on, her driveway remained untouched. Friday afternoon, I got a phone call from an unknown number. I answered cautiously. Marcus Atwood. A woman's voice, professional and crisp, speaking. This is Jennifer Wallace from Channel 7 News. We've received information about an HOA president in Lakewood who allegedly embezzled funds and then harassed a homeowner who discovered the theft. Would you be willing to comment? I was not expecting media attention. Who told you about this? I'm not at liberty to say, but we're planning to run a story this weekend. I'd like to get your perspective. I agreed to meet her, but only with Derek present. We set up a time for Saturday morning before the HOA meeting. Derek advised me to be careful but honest. The interview was conducted in my living room. Jennifer Wallace was younger than she sounded on the phone, probably in her early 30s, with the kind of sharp intelligence that made her good at her job. Her cameraman set up while she reviewed her notes. "So walk me through this from the beginning," she said once the camera was rolling. "When did you first have conflict with Linda Chapman?" I explained about the snow blower, the attempted confiscation, the retaliatory fines, and finally Robert's discovery of the embezzlement. Jennifer asked pointed questions, and Derek occasionally advised me on what I could and could not say given the ongoing investigation. And her driveway is still not cleared. Jennifer asked, glancing out my window toward Linda's house down the street. As of an hour ago, no. That seems ironic, given her demand for your snow blower. I thought so too. After the interview, Jennifer and her cameraman went to film B-roll of the neighborhood and try to get a comment from Linda. I watched from my window as they knocked on her door. Linda answered, saw the camera, and immediately slammed the door shut. They tried for several minutes before giving up. Saturday morning arrived cold and clear. The special HOA meeting was scheduled for 10 in the morning. I arrived 15 minutes early to find the parking lot already nearly full. The community center could hold maybe 100 people comfortably, and it looked like we were going to exceed that. Linda arrived exactly at 10, flanked by Patricia, and a man I did not recognize who was probably her lawyer. She looked stressed and tired, with dark circles under her eyes. For just a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Then I remembered the tire slashing and the feeling disappeared. Robert called the meeting to order. As treasurer and the one who had called the meeting, he was running things. We're here to address serious allegations regarding financial mismanagement and to vote on whether to remove Linda Chapman from the HOA board. Linda, you have the right to address these allegations before we vote. Linda stood, her lawyer whispering something to her. These accusations are completely false, she said loudly. Robert Chen has fabricated documents because he's working with Marcus Atwood, who has been a disruptive presence in this community since day one. That's not true, Robert said calmly. I have bank statements, canceled checks, and correspondence with the county registrar confirming that the companies you paid do not exist. Those were legitimate contractors who may have since gone out of business. 3 days ago. Because I called them 3 days ago, and the phone numbers were disconnected with no forwarding information. And the addresses listed on the invoices are parking lots or empty buildings. The crowd murmured. People were pulling out phones, probably fact-checking Robert's claims in real time. Linda's lawyer stood. My client maintains her innocence. These accusations should be investigated through proper channels, not in a kangaroo court. They are being investigated, I said, standing up. By the Lakewood Police Department. Detective Sarah Martinez is handling the case. That caused an uproar. People started talking all at once. Linda's face went pale, then red. You went to the police, she shouted at me. You vindictive, selfish, you embezzled $65,000 from this HOA. I cut her off. You created fake companies and paid yourself. Then when I would not give you my personal property, you tried to destroy my life with fake fines and a fraudulent lien. What did you expect me to do? I did not. She was flustered now, tripping over her words. Robert stood. I think we've heard enough. Let's proceed to the vote. All those in favor of removing Linda Chapman from the HOA board, raise your hands. A forest of hands went up. I counted quickly. It had to be at least 90% of the people present. All opposed. Patricia raised her hand. A few others, but not many. The motion passes. Linda Chapman is removed from the HOA board effective immediately. We'll need to hold elections for a new president, but in the interim, as treasurer, I'll handle administrative duties. Linda's lawyer grabbed her arm, probably telling her not to say anything else. But Linda had reached her breaking point. This is illegal. You cannot just remove me. I'll sue every single one of you. You're welcome to try, Derek said, standing. But given the criminal investigation and the evidence of embezzlement, I'd suggest you focus on finding a good criminal defense attorney instead. That seemed to finally penetrate. Linda's bluster deflated. She looked around the room at all the hostile faces and seemed to realize how completely her little kingdom had collapsed. Without another word, she turned and walked out, her lawyer hurrying after her. The meeting continued for another hour, dealing with the logistics of new elections and what to do about the stolen money. Derek explained that we might be able to recover some of it through legal action, though it would depend on what Linda had done with it and what assets she had. As people were filing out, Jennifer Wallace appeared with her cameraman. Did she resign? She was removed by a vote, I said. 2/3 majority, and the embezzlement investigation ongoing, but the evidence is pretty solid. The story aired that night on the local news. It was a 3-minute segment featuring my interview, footage of the neighborhood, and a brief statement from the Lakewood police confirming an active investigation into HOA fund misappropriation. They tried to get a comment from Linda, but she had apparently barricaded herself in her house. Sunday was quiet. I caught up on errands and home maintenance, trying to return to normal life. My new security cameras captured a couple of people driving slowly past my house, probably neighborhood gawkers, but nothing threatening. Monday morning, I was getting ready for work when I heard a tentative knock on my door. I checked the camera feed on my phone and saw Linda standing on my porch alone. No lawyer, no Patricia, just her, looking small and defeated. I opened the door but did not invite her in. "What do you want, Linda?" She could not meet my eyes. "I need to apologize." "Okay, not just verbally," she said, pulling an envelope from her purse. "In writing, like you said. I wrote this last night." She held out the envelope. I took it, opened it, and read the handwritten letter inside. It was 2 pages of detailed apology, acknowledging the harassment, the false fines, the attempted property grab, and admitting that she had been wrong. It stopped short of confessing to the embezzlement, probably on her lawyer's advice, but it covered everything else. "Why now?" I asked. "Because my lawyer says that showing remorse and making restitution might help when the criminal charges come. And because you were right. I was completely out of line. I let the power go to my head, and then when things started to unravel, I just kept making worse and worse decisions." "You slashed my tires, didn't you?" She hesitated, then nodded. "I'm sorry, I'll pay for replacements." "That's a crime, Linda. I filed a police report." "I know. I'm turning myself in this afternoon. My lawyer's coming with me." I was not sure what to say to that. Part of me wanted to gloat, to rub her face in how thoroughly she had destroyed herself. But standing there looking at this broken woman who had imploded her entire life over pride and greed, I just felt tired. "Your driveway's still buried," I said. She looked confused by the change of subject. "What, your driveway? From Friday's storm, you never got it cleared." "I couldn't afford to hire anyone after I paid for your tires, and I do not have equipment." I considered for a moment, then sighed. "Wait here." I went to my garage and fired up my snow blower, then spent the next 20 minutes clearing Linda's driveway while she stood on her porch watching. When I finished, I killed the engine and looked up at her. "I'm not doing this because we're friends or because your apology fixed everything," I said. "I'm doing this because it's the decent thing to do and somebody needs to show you what that looks like." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you." I went home, cleaned up the snow blower, and headed to work. Derek called during my lunch break with an update. Linda had indeed turned herself in for the tire slashing, and the police had added that to the existing embezzlement investigation. Her lawyer was apparently negotiating a plea deal that would involve paying full restitution to the HOA and serving some amount of jail time. "She'll probably get a year or 2, Derek said. "Maybe less if she cooperates fully and the judge is lenient." "The embezzlement is a felony, though, so she will have a record." "What about the lien on my house?" "Being removed this week, and we're pursuing legal action for damages. Between the harassment and the false fines, you might be able to recover $15,000 to $20,000. "I don't need her money, Derek. I just wanted her to stop." "I know, but send a message. Other HOA boards need to understand they cannot abuse their power like this. He had a point. We agreed to move forward with the civil suit. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal proceedings and neighborhood drama. Linda's house went up for sale. Patricia resigned from the HOA board in protest, though nobody seemed particularly upset about losing her. Deborah Walsh was elected as the new HOA president in an emergency election, and she immediately began reforming the HOA's policies to prevent future abuses. The police investigation concluded in early April. Linda was charged with embezzlement, creating false business entities, and vandalism for the tire slashing. She took a plea deal that gave her 18 months in county jail, 5 years probation, and required her to pay full restitution to the HOA plus my damages. Her lawyer managed to get her sentenced to a minimum security facility, and she would be eligible for work release after 6 months. The criminal case got more local media attention. Jennifer Wallace did a follow-up story about HOA abuse and the lack of oversight for these neighborhood organizations. It sparked some discussion in the state legislature about creating better regulations, though nothing concrete came of it. By the time summer arrived, life in the neighborhood had returned to something resembling normal. The new HOA board under Deborah's leadership was refreshingly hands-off, focusing on actual community needs rather than petty enforcement. The recovered embezzlement funds were used to repair the community pool and update the playground equipment, projects that actually benefited residents. My snow blower sat in the garage, waiting for next winter. Several neighbors had bought their own after the previous winter's drama, which I considered a positive development. Self-sufficiency seemed healthier than the forced dependency Linda had been trying to create. One afternoon in July, I was mowing my lawn when Mrs. Patterson called me over. She was standing in her driveway with a tall woman in her 30s who I did not recognize. "Marcus, this is my granddaughter Emily," Mrs. Patterson said. "She's moving to Denver for work and is looking at houses in the area. I was telling her about last winter." Emily shook my hand. "Grandma says you helped her a lot during the snowstorms. Just being a good neighbor." She also told me about the HOA situation. That must have been stressful. "It was educational," I said diplomatically. "I'm looking at a house on Maple Street, but it has an HOA. I'm trying to decide if that's a deal breaker." "Not all HOAs are bad," I said. "Ours is actually functional now. Just make sure you read the bylaws carefully before you buy and pay attention to who's running things." Power-hungry board members are usually pretty obvious if you know what to look for. We chatted for a few more minutes before I excused myself to finish my lawn. As I worked, I reflected on how much had changed in just a few months. Linda had destroyed her life over pride and a snow blower. The neighborhood had been forced to confront how much power they had handed over to their HOA board without proper oversight. And I had learned that sometimes standing your ground, even over something that seemed small, could expose much larger problems. My phone buzzed with a text from Derek. The final paperwork had been filed. The lien was officially removed, and Linda's restitution payment would be arriving within the week. It was over. I finished mowing, put away the equipment, and cracked open a beer on my back deck. The late afternoon sun was warm, and the neighborhood was quiet except for kids playing in the distance and the occasional car passing by. Next door, Tom Rodriguez was working in his garden. We waved to each other. 2 houses down, the Johnsons were setting up a barbecue grill. Normal, peaceful suburban life. Exactly what it should be. The doorbell rang just as I was contemplating firing up my own grill. I answered it to find a process server with a clipboard. "Marcus Atwood." "That's me. Sign here, please." I signed and accepted the envelope. After the server left, I opened it to find a court order. Linda's restitution check for $18,000, along with the formal removal of all fines and the lien. There was also a brief note from the court indicating that Linda had been transferred to the Jefferson County Detention Facility to begin serving her sentence. I stared at the check for a long moment. $18,000. It was more than I expected. Derek must have included emotional distress and legal fees in the settlement. The money would be nice, certainly. I could finish my basement or take a real vacation. But more than the money, it was vindication. Proof that standing up to abuse of power, even in something as mundane as a homeowner association, mattered. Proof that bullies who hide behind official titles and bylaws could still be held accountable. I called Derek to confirm I had received everything. "It's really done?" I asked. "It's done." "How do you feel?" "Tired. Relieved. A little sad, honestly." Sad. Linda threw away her freedom and her reputation over something so stupid. It did not have to go this way. "No, it did not," Derek agreed. "But she made her choices. You just refused to be her victim." After hanging up, I sat on my deck for a long time, drinking my beer and watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink. The mountains in the distance were still capped with snow, though it would melt soon enough. Next winter would bring more snow, and I would be out there with my snow blower, clearing my driveway and helping my neighbors who needed it. But I would be doing it because I chose to, not because someone with a title demanded it. That difference mattered more than I could easily express. The following week, Deborah called a general HOA meeting to discuss the recovered funds and how to use them. I attended, more out of civic duty than any real enthusiasm. The community center was about half full, a much more reasonable turnout than the dramatic special meeting that had removed Linda. Deborah ran the meeting efficiently and without drama. People proposed various projects, voted on priorities, and everything was handled democratically and transparently. It was, frankly, boring, which was exactly what an HOA meeting should be. As people were leaving, Deborah pulled me aside. "I wanted to thank you again for everything you did. This neighborhood needed a wake-up call about oversight and accountability." "I just did not want to give up my snow blower," I said with a slight smile. "It was never really about the snow blower, though, was it? It was about someone abusing authority and nobody stopping them." "I suppose so." "Well, for what it's worth, I'm implementing new policies. Monthly financial reports available to all homeowners, board meetings with open comment periods, and limits on how many consecutive terms someone can serve as president. No more little dictatorships." "That sounds good." "There's one more thing," Deborah said, looking slightly uncomfortable. "Several people have suggested you should run for the board. We have 2 open positions." I almost laughed. "No, thank you. I've had enough of HOA politics to last a lifetime." "Fair enough. But if you change your mind, the offer stands." I drove home thinking about power and responsibility. Linda had wanted power without responsibility. She had seen the HOA president position as a way to control people and be important. When that power was challenged, she had doubled down instead of stepping back and examining her behavior. It was a cautionary tale, really, about how ordinary people in small positions of authority could become petty tyrants if nobody was watching. About how easy it was to justify increasingly terrible decisions once you started down that path. But it was also a story about community, about the people who had stood up with me once they understood what was happening. Robert, risking his position to expose the truth. The 35 neighbors who had signed the petition. Even Deborah, who had found her courage to speak up when it mattered. August brought a heat wave. My lawn turned brown despite regular watering, and the mountains shimmered in the distance through waves of heat. I spent most of my free time inside with the air conditioning, catching up on projects I had neglected during the winter drama. One evening, I got an unexpected email from Linda. She had limited internet access in jail, but apparently enough to send messages. I hesitated before opening it, not sure I wanted to reopen that chapter. The email was short. She wanted me to know that she was using her time in jail to get therapy and deal with the issues that had led to her behavior. She was working in the facility's library and taking online courses in accounting ethics, which struck me as darkly ironic. She did not ask for forgiveness or try to excuse what she had done. She just wanted me to know she was trying to be better. I did not respond. I was not ready for that yet, and maybe I never would be. But I did not delete the email either. I saved it in a folder and moved on with my evening. September brought cooler weather and the start of football season. Tom Rodriguez invited me over for the Broncos game, and we sat on his deck drinking beer and watching Denver lose to the Raiders. Normal, comfortable friendship with a neighbor. No drama, no conflict, just two guys enjoying an afternoon. You hear Linda's getting out in March, Tom mentioned during a commercial break. Work release? Yeah, I guess she got a job at some accounting firm that hires ex-cons, part of a rehabilitation program. Good for her, I guess. You think she'll come back here? Her house sold, so probably not. I heard she's moving in with her sister in Aurora. We watched the rest of the game without talking about Linda. It felt good to have her relegated to past tense, a problem that had been solved and moved beyond. October brought the first hints of winter. Light snow flurries that melted by noon, frost on the windshields in the morning. I checked my snow blower to make sure it was ready for the season. Changed the oil, fresh gas, new spark plug. Routine maintenance that felt almost meditative. Mrs. Patterson's granddaughter Emily had ended up buying the house on Maple Street. She moved in mid-October, and several neighbors helped her unload the moving truck. It was the kind of community cooperation that felt organic and genuine, not forced or mandated by HOA decree. At the impromptu housewarming barbecue that evening, Emily raised a beer to toast everyone. To good neighbors, she said. The kind who help because they want to, not because they have to. We all drank to that. It felt like the closing of one chapter and the beginning of another. November brought Thanksgiving and the first real snow of the season. 4 inches overnight, light and fluffy. I was out early with my snow blower, clearing my driveway and then Mrs. Patterson's. Tom caught me as I was finishing and gestured to his driveway. You got time? Sure, but I thought you were going to buy your own. I did. It's broken, won't start. I've got a repair appointment next week, but until then. No problem. I cleared his driveway and he helped me carry firewood in from my woodpile. Fair exchange, neighborly cooperation. The way it should work. December brought more snow and holiday decorations. The neighborhood looked festive with lights and inflatable Santas. The HOA had voted to spend some of the recovered embezzlement funds on new entrance decorations, and Deborah had organized a committee to handle it democratically, instead of just making executive decisions. Christmas Eve. I was surprised to receive a card in the mail. It was from Linda, postmarked from Aurora. Inside was a simple message. Thank you for helping me when I did not deserve it. I hope you have a peaceful holiday. Linda. I set the card on my mantle next to the others. Forgiveness was complicated, but acknowledging growth seemed important. The new year arrived with another blizzard. 12 inches of snow fell over 2 days, and the entire neighborhood ground to a halt. I spent both days with my snow blower, helping anyone who needed it. Several other neighbors with equipment did the same. We had become a community that took care of each other, not because an HOA president demanded it, but because it was the right thing to do. In late January, Derek called with news. Linda completed her work release program early. Good behavior, full restitution paid, therapy completion. She'll be on probation for the next few years, but she's officially out. That's good, I guess, second chances and all that. How do you feel about it? I feel like it's not my problem anymore, I said honestly. She did her time, she's making restitution. What she does with her second chance is up to her. That's remarkably mature of you. I'm trying. February brought another meeting with the snow blower drama, but this time it was different. A young couple new to the neighborhood knocked on my door one Saturday morning. Their driveway was buried and they did not have equipment yet. We heard you sometimes help people out, the husband said nervously. We'd be happy to pay you or trade some kind of service. I'm a mechanic if you ever need car work. No payment necessary, I said. Give me 10 minutes to finish my coffee and I'll be over. Really, just like that, just like that. Welcome to the neighborhood. As I cleared their driveway 20 minutes later, I reflected on how far things had come. Last year at this time, I was fighting with Linda over this exact machine. Now it was just a tool I used to help my neighbors, freely given because that's what community meant. The young couple's name was Michael and Sarah. They invited me in for hot chocolate afterward, and we talked about the neighborhood and the HOA's recent reforms. They had heard rumors about the previous drama but not the full story. Sounds intense, Michael said when I gave them the abbreviated version. It was, but we got through it, and the community is better for it. It's nice to know people look out for each other here, Sarah said. In our old apartment complex, you barely knew your neighbors. That really was the heart of it. Not HOA rules or property values or perfect driveways. Just people who knew each other and cared enough to help when help was needed. March brought warming temperatures and the beginning of spring. The massive piles of plowed snow began to melt, revealing the lawns underneath. I spent a weekend doing yard cleanup, raking up the debris and salt residue from winter. One afternoon, I looked up from my work to see a woman standing on the sidewalk watching me. She looked familiar, but it took me a moment to recognize Linda without the designer clothes and perfect hair. She wore jeans and a simple jacket, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked older, tired, but somehow more genuine than before. "I'm sorry to bother you," she said quietly. "I was visiting someone in the neighborhood and wanted to stop by, to thank you in person." I set down my rake. "You did not have to do that, I know. But I wanted to. What you did, clearing my driveway after everything I put you through, that stuck with me. It reminded me what being a decent person looks like." "You've finished your sentence. Work release ended 2 weeks ago. I'm living with my sister, working at an accounting firm that specializes in nonprofit audits, ironically enough, trying to use my powers for good this time." I almost smiled at that. "Good for you. I won't take up any more of your time. I just wanted to say thank you and that I'm sorry, really, genuinely sorry for all of it." She turned to leave, but I called after her. "Linda," she looked back. "Good luck, I mean that." She nodded, her eyes shining with tears, and walked away. I watched her go, feeling a sense of closure I had not realized I needed. That evening, I sat on my deck with a beer, watching the sunset and thinking about the strange journey of the past year. It had started with something as simple as a snow blower and escalated into embezzlement, criminal charges, and the complete reorganization of our neighborhood governance. It had been stressful and exhausting, and sometimes scary, but it had also brought the community together in unexpected ways. It had exposed and removed a corrupt leader. It had taught us all the importance of oversight and accountability. And in a strange way, it had reminded us what really mattered. Not perfect driveways or enforced rules, but people taking care of each other because it was right. My phone buzzed with a text from Derek. Saw the news. Linda's working for nonprofit Integrity Associates. They do good work. Maybe she'll find redemption. Maybe, I texted back. People can change. Speaking of change, Emily told me you're still refusing to run for HOA board. Still refusing. Once was enough. Fair enough. Drinks this weekend. You buying. After the fees I charged you, you're buying. I laughed and agreed to meet him Saturday. Normal life, normal friendships, normal problems. No drama, no corruption, no HOA presidents demanding my property. As spring turned into summer, the neighborhood settled into a comfortable rhythm. The new HOA board functioned efficiently and without controversy. People paid their dues, maintained their properties, and generally got along. It was boring in the best possible way. My snow blower sat clean and maintained in my garage, waiting for next winter. When the snow came again, I would be ready. I would clear my driveway and help my neighbors who needed it, not because anyone demanded it, but because that's what neighbors do. And if anyone ever again tried to demand my personal property for community use, well, I had a lawyer on speed dial and a story that proved sometimes the smallest stand against abuse of power could matter most. The whole saga had taught me something important. Communities are not held together by rules and enforcement. They are held together by people who choose, every day, to be decent to each other. Sometimes that decency means standing up to bullies, even when it's uncomfortable. Sometimes it means helping someone who doesn't deserve it, just to show them what grace looks like. And sometimes it means refusing to give up your snow blower, no matter how much someone demands it, because principles matter more than convenience. As the sun set on another quiet evening in Lakewood, Colorado, I raised my beer in a silent toast to lessons learned and battles won. The neighborhood was at peace. Linda was rebuilding her life, and my snow blower remained exactly where it belonged. In my garage, ready to help anyone who needed it on my terms. That, in the end, was what community really meant.